Number 10. The Perfect World. The Perfect World, also known as Alternate Earth 11638, is home to the Amazing Spider-Man. In this reality, Peter Parker never lost his Uncle Ben, which you would think would make him a better guy. Peter in this reality is rich and popular, having lost no one, and basically lives a happier and less tragic life. However, without this loss, in reality, this version of Peter Parker is basically a huge jerk. The Amazing Spider-Man ends up motivated by his Uncle Ben to use an invention created by Parker's own corporation, which opens portals into alternate worlds, to steal the life energy of other spider folks and use it to bolster his own powers. Rude. Number 9. Worst X-Man ever. In the alternate reality that Bailey Hoskins belongs to, the world has basically become an apocalyptic one for those who oppose the great mutant ruler King Riches. Riches managed to overthrow both Charles Xavier and Magneto and decided which mutants basically get to live. Hint, it's all the people that surrender and submit to him and his influence. Not a fan of this tyrannical future, Bailey Hoskins, known as the worst X-Man ever, in the end fixes this reality by killing Riches with his mutant power, which allows him to basically self-destruct, but only once as he can't regenerate at all. It is then implied that our reality comes into existence due to Hoskins fixing this previous and terrible one, making him actually perhaps the best mutant ever? Number 8. Battle Realm / Battle World. Battle Realm is the alternate Earth of 15513, which houses God Emperor Doom's Battle World. Before Battle World was constructed, many heroes had perished during the collisions of alternate realities known as the Incursion. Dr. Doom acquired power that allowed him to reconstruct a new world patched together with alternate realities known as Battle World, where he was the one ruler, taking the title God Emperor. Doom demanded loyalty of his subjects and was worshipped as a deity, believed to be the one true creator of all things, with many who lived on Battle World believing there was not even anything beyond their own reality, and in some cases their own realm. Eventually a rebellion rose, and Mr. Fantastic vs. 616 and his 1610 counterpart, the Maker, ended up exposing God Emperor Doom's true source of power, which was Molecule Man, who in turn gave Reed Richards his power so he could build a new and better world, thereby causing Battle World to collapse in on itself. Number 7. Deadpool kills the Marvelverse. The Deadpool of Earth 12101 doesn't even just settle for killing the Marvelverse. This twisted alternate Deadpool ends up going in the same reality to take out acclaimed literary characters and even multiversal alternates of himself as well, becoming the leader of the evil Deadpool Corps. Due to Deadpool being so annoying, the other heroes lock him up in an effort to have him treated for his mental illness. Little do they know, the man treating him is actually Psycho Man, a villain who attempts to manipulate his patients, brainwashing them so he can use them for his own machinations. When he attempts to do this to Deadpool, however, because his mind is already so warped, something goes wrong. He cures Deadpool of the voices inside his mind, but instead, Deadpool gets a new voice in their stead, one that convinces him to kill the Marvelverse heroes and villains of his Earth. This series is not just dark for the concept, but can also be considered dark for how violent it is. Number 6. Deadpool kills the Marvelverse again. Speaking of Deadpool killing the Marvelverse, he does it again! Although this time around, it's a new alternate reality with a new alternate version of Deadpool. At least, that's what we're led to believe. Although for both series we do have the same creative team, with both Cullen Bunn and Dalibor Talaic working on both Deadpool Kills the Marvelverse and Deadpool Kills the Marvelverse Again. Cullen Bunn has actually been the mastermind behind both Killustrated and Deadpool Kills Deadpool as well. In Deadpool Kills the Marvelverse Again, this alternate version of Deadpool has an even darker story, being brainwashed by villains into becoming their hitman, taking out heroes while having fantasies of going on fun adventures with them. It's pretty messed up. In the end, Deadpool realizes what has really been going on, but only after he has killed the heroes. He then decides to take revenge on the villains, killing them thereafter. Number 5. Punisher kills the Marvelverse. If you thought Punisher's life wasn't tragic enough, the alternate Punisher of Earth 95126 ends up planning to take out the entire Marvel Universe after his family is killed once more due to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This time they are civilian casualties in a superhero battle between the Avengers, Skrulls, and X-Men. Blaming the heroic and villainous communities alike, Punisher plots to take out basically all of the main characters of Marvel, be they good or evil, directly involved in his family's death or not. Realizing that he himself had become a vigilante in his own way, he finishes the story by taking his own life. Number 4. Earth 51412. We only know one main character from this timeline, and he dies shortly after us meeting him, but his story is still one of my favorite scary Spider-Man alternate stories. Earth 51412 is the home of Patton Parnell, one of the spider totems. Like Peter Parker, Patton is bitten by a radioactive spider, which turns him into a horrific version of Spider-Man, one that craves the flesh of other beings. Patton's story, you see, is not as heroic as his 616 counterpart. Instead, Patton, who is mistreated by his Uncle Ted and is teased by other kids at school, but pines for his own version of MJ, the girl next door, ends up turning those that teased him into victims as he literally becomes a Spider-Man. That is to say, a man spider. He also lays eggs inside his Uncle Ted, which is really something else. This Spider-Verse story is giving the Zombieverse a run for their money with this entire horror show. Number 3. Kobik's Timeline. In Kobik's timeline, Captain America became a Hydra agent after becoming captured and brainwashed by Hydra when he was just a child. As a young man and Hydra agent, he was then planted in the States, acting as a long-time sleeper agent, working to infiltrate the United States of America. He became Captain America just like in the Earth 616 continuity, but instead was now a double agent, working for the Axis forces. Eventually, he revealed his true nature and overthrew the United States government, becoming Hydra Supreme. Fortunately, when the real Captain America, whose true self had been stored in the Cosmic Cube, re-emerged, he was able to defeat this evil version of himself and save the world from existing permanently in this timeline. Whew. Number 2. Last Gun on Earth. The reality of Earth 11080 has a bit of a Marvel Zombieverse feel, but this time around we have at least one person who is immune to the virus that is spreading and infecting the entire world, including our hero population. Oh no. Punisher is the only one immune, and in the end it's up to him to save those still uninfected and fight off all the infected heroes and villains. This alternate Earth also gives us the stories of Marvel Universe versus Wolverine, where Wolverine is actually forced to take out his own infected X-Men teammates, and Marvel Universe versus the Avengers, where the Avengers are forced to team up with Doctor Doom, who then betrays them, which is kind of expected really, leaving Punisher as the last gun to defend the last of Earth's survivors in Marvel Universe vs. Punisher, which was actually the first series to come out sequentially, inspiring the others to be written as prequels. Number 1. Ruins. In my part 1 we talked a bit about the Zombieverse. Like the Zombieverse, Ruins is an interesting alternate reality for me. It's squeegee. I both admire how crazy and dark it is and also dislike it somewhat, because it just makes me uncomfortable. But also that's kind of the point of Ruins. In this reality, basically every superpower is kind of a curse. It examines superpowers and their side effects as though they were real, and follows a reporter who travels the states documenting the horrific cases of heroes. Not all heroes are actually superpowered in this reality either. Dr. Donald Blake is a cult leader who believed he is Thor after suffering from an addiction to hallucinogens. Emma Frost runs the Church of the Next Generation, where she encourages her followers to allow her to adopt their children, giving them non-essential surgeries in an attempt to help them tap into their psychic potential.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Days of Future Past. Taking place on Earth 811 in the Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142 back in the early 80s, written by Chris Claremont and John Byrne, this was of course the inspiration behind the major motion picture with the same name, released in 2014. The movie, first of all, is my favorite X-Men film of all times, and the two-parter comic sure does deliver the goods. So right off the hop we see this dark world divided by 3 classes of people. We have H for humans, clean of the mutant gene, A for anomalous human, so a normal person possessing mutant genetic potential, and of course M for mutant. The year is 2013 and it's just a tad darker than our 2013 ended up being. So after the assassination of Senator Robert Kelly, mutants are being hunted down by Sentinels. Either that or a few exceptions were sent to internment camps, which is still quite a grim future. Now of course the whole fun of this is the fact that Kitty Pryde can alter the timeline and prevent this from happening. So give this story a go, and if you liked it, which I know you will, you can queue up the movie right after. And number 9, Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. Not Wade Wilson, no way. Yes way. Wade Wilson kills the Marvel Universe, and it is gloriously gory. Deadpool of Earth 12101, that is. A little bit different. So this issue was released August 2012, and just the front cover you know you want to take a peek in. So what's the story here? Well, the X-Men put Wade into the Ravencroft Asylum in attempts to, heal his insanity. But of course the Doctor wasn't too good at handling such a task. The Doctor being Psycho Man, of course. So he brainwashed Wade in hopes to shut down all of his inner voices. It worked. The only downside, those voices were now replaced with voices that were encouraging him to, well, kill everyone in the Marvel Universe. Right off the bat, this series pulls you right in. It opens up with the Fantastic Four in a not great spot with Wade Wilson. He kind of kills them all. Like, Reed Richards' face is all rubbery and it's like, looks like it's melting off, and then Sue has to watch Deadpool kill Johnny before meeting her demise as well. And that's just the first few pages. Then the Watcher ends up taking us back to the beginning and how it all started with Dr. Psycho, and then all that jazz. It's honestly a really, really fun run. Not for the faint of heart, of course, but definitely fun. Number 8, Old Man Logan. Now, we were all so happy to see an R-rated Wolverine story on the big screen with, of course, the release of Logan back in 2017. Now, this source material has to come from somewhere, so it was loosely based on the story Old Man Logan, written by Mark Miller and Steve McNiven, released in 2009. The film had Logan in the spotlight alongside Charles Xavier and Caliban, and it's one of my favorite R-rated movies, but in the comics, the story has moments that are even darker than what we saw. That's right, darker. So due to certain character rights, obviously, we didn't have nearly the same amount of superheroes in the film. But the comics, oh boy, gets pretty weird. I won't even mention Hulk Gang. I just mentioned it, damn it. This version of Logan wants to be peaceful, but with blind Hawkeye coming along and pitching a cross-country drive, things get a little messy. And number 7, Age of Ultron. Released in 2013 and written by Brian Michael Bendis and Brian Hitch, this crossover event was a 10-part story. And with the Avengers Age of Ultron movie released just 2 years later, it was pretty popular in sales. The story starts off with a bang. We have Hawkeye's perspective, and he's actually on his way to try and rescue Spider-Man. And the world isn't looking too good. We have Ultron's return, and his Sentinels are guarding the streets. Are there others? Spider-Man asks. Not enough, Hawkeye responds. Guys, honestly, this story is incredible. It really makes you love Hawkeye even more. Like, the amount of characters used in this seems like it's almost overwhelming at first, but with the world being in peril, there's like this calm but urgent energy that's trickled throughout the pages, and it actually makes it really tough to put the book down. Even going back and referencing a few parts, I just ended up reading the last 7 pages. I was like, what am I doing? I'm gonna be late. There's this really cool monologue type conversation that Peter has in the 2nd issue, and you see him explain his perspective, like how he woke up and the world was just gone to shit. And it's done really well. And then it kind of pulls back and you see the remaining superheroes, and there's not that many. Number 6, 2099. Published in 1992, this is the future where we all got cool costumes. And of course, the future has to be shiny and metallic. Didn't any of you watch SpongeBob? We see some fun stuff in this line of issues. For starters, we get the classic future Spider-Man suit, so fans who stuck around until the very end of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse were treated to a nice little 2099 Spider-Man voiced by, of course, Oscar Isaac. The sequel is going to crush it, oh my god. So we see, of course, future versions of your favorite characters as well, like Dr. Doom, who actually becomes the president at one point, which is super neat. Just the guy you want as a president. The most notable part of this future is Spider-Man's point of view. His run, of course, starts with Spider-Man 2099, and it's always a good time to see what people think the future will look like. It's always shiny and blue. For some reason, everything's always blue in the future. It's just like boring and blue and like kind of shiny. I don't know. Number 5, Hulk Future Imperfect. Seeing our heroes grow up on screen and on the page is a wonderful, wonderful thing, usually. Seeing Old Man Cap at the end of Endgame made my throat tighten up so fast. I felt like I was gonna cry out of my neck. It was the weirdest. I was holding back. I got all my friends there, big 3D glasses, and I'm like, don't cry, man, don't do it. I loved that story arc. But what about other characters living out their days, like the Hulk? Well, making his first appearance in a vision in the Incredible Hulk Volume 2, issue 401, Maestro was the main antagonist in the Future Imperfect storyline. The story takes place about 100 years in the future after a nuclear war put the planet real close to extinction. So an alternate future version of the Hulk, Maestro, had been absorbing all this nuclear radiation the entire time and ended up becoming like the strongest thing on the planet. Massive increases in strength and anger, plus the brains of Banner, made him pretty unstoppable. It's beautiful, but so scary. You gotta check it out. Number 4, World War Hulk. Again with the Hulk. This one is pretty wild. So Thor Ragnarok was loosely based off the Planet Hulk storyline. Loose in a sense because the comic didn't end up going so well. So on Sakaar, in the comics, the rocket that he arrived in ended up blowing up, causing casualties that left the Hulk, angry. So what did he do? Well, he heads back to Earth and thus begins this World War Hulk storyline. The 5-part issue released in 2007 by Greg Pak. And this is a very dark but very fun version of the big green guy. He just destroys everybody, all the heroes that Earth has come to love, just in the path of this very aggressive, angry beast. It's crazy. He locks the Illuminati in Madison Square Garden and makes them fight to the death. I mean, I'd definitely pay for that. Nowadays, with movie theaters being closed, I'd pay for anything. Let's go. I mean, once you spend enough time on Sakaar, it becomes second nature anyway, so whatever. In the first issue of this series, you see Iron Man in his Hulkbuster armor, and he uses repulsors to accelerate his punch, which is something Iron Man can be seen doing in the MCU. I like when they keep small details. Just adds to it, it makes it a bit more fun. So make sure if you haven't already to grab all 5 issues of the 2007 World War Hulk story because it's a treat. Number 3, Marvel Universe vs. The Punisher. I began this list talking about Deadpool, trying to kill the entire Marvel Universe, but what about the other ruthless killer, Frank Castle? This 27 miniseries written by Jonathan Mayberry and Goran Parlov shows the entire world somehow even crazier than our world today. See, everybody on Earth has turned violent due to this biological weapon. So right on the front cover, we see this. We have all of our heroes drooling like they're cannibalistic creatures. So it's up to the Punisher to walk around and save the lucky few who are not infected. Number 2, Age of Apocalypse. This epic 38-part crossover is one for the books. With a combination of creators on board like Scott Lobdell, Roger Cruz, Joe Madureira, this world we find Professor X's son Legion, but he accidentally kills his dad before the X-Men were even a thing. Interesting. Then things go from bad to worse. In comes Apocalypse, just right on time to ruin the day. Well, not just ruin the day, but take over the world, rather. The X-Men have always been the time travel group. I mean, it's no surprise these guys have so many time travel missions. I mean, look at their roster. Earth 295 changed forever after Legion's failed mission to kill Magneto. So Apocalypse ended up attacking 10 years earlier than in the original timeline. Trouble ensues. And finally, number 1, we got Spider-Man Noir. We go now to Earth 90214, not to be confused with 90210. Great show. This is arguably the darkest Marvel future. This Earth has quite an interesting roster. See, while in some issues like Age of Ultron, it's said that New York was once full of like 7,000 different superheroes, but in this universe, only a few actually have powers. That being Luke Cage, Daredevil, and of course, Spider-Man. This series ran from 2009 to 2010, and it was an alternate universe event. And this dark vibe works really well with Spider-Man. The 1930s, turns out, is a great time setting for a Spider-Man story. It kind of felt like Watchmen. It was like very dark and grim. Spider-Man carries a gun with him. Bop bop, it doesn't shoot webs. I know, it's stupid. Basically, the story is the same, only Peter is raised during the Great Depression, and Uncle Ben was actually killed by the Goblin because Uncle Ben was an activist and protested against sweatshops. As if Uncle Ben couldn't get more likable. We were happy to see Nicolas Cage play this Spider-Man in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And I like that casting choice a lot. Nick Cage is the man. If there's one line that I'm ending this list on, it's Nick Cage is the man.
Starting us off in at number 10, Earth X Namor. We're starting off our list with a future version of a hero that's quite disturbing. We're talking Namor, the Submariner on Earth X, also known as Earth 9997, an alternate timeline created by Alex Ross. On Earth X, all ordinary human beings have gained superpowers. It follows some of Marvel's mainstays and how they cope with a world in which superpowers are now commonplace. As you can imagine, their narratives have drastically changed because of this. Namor is one of the many heroes that doesn't have an overly pleasant time in this alternate universe. Thanks to having teamed up with Dr. Doom in the past, he's partially responsible for an event that killed Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. As you can imagine, this did not bode well with Franklin Richards, who would use his reality-bending powers to punish the Underwater Prince. How so? Well, he made it so that exactly half of Namor's body is constantly on fire when he was above water, scarring his body immensely. Eventually, the curse would be counteracted thanks to a spell via Doctor Strange. Speaking of Earth X, that brings us to our next number, In at 9, Earth X Cable. Cable of Earth 9997 has it even rougher than Namor. He's a literal pool of organic metal. Thanks to the techno-organic virus, Earth X Cable has a pretty gruesome fate. Hidden from the rest of society, planted beneath Magneto's Sentinel City in the Savage Land, the virus has completely taken control of him and has reduced his body to an immobile blob of metal. And it's pretty creepy looking. He's basically an entrapped giant living beneath the earth. Moving on to number 8, Doom 2099. So yes, Dr. Doom is way more villain than anti-hero, but we wanted to include this version of him on this list because it's utterly terrifying. Doom of Earth 928, aka the 2099 alternate reality, is known as All-Father Doom. It's worth noting that this universe is very much a bleak, cynical one. Now, this Doom is technically not Victor, but rather a man who believed himself to be Doom, having awakened in Latveria in the year of 2099. He takes over Latveria and then gradually starts planning on how to take over the rest of the world. So it should be no surprise that he claimed the United States presidency too. Moving on to number 7, Dark Beast. Dark Beast is a product of the Age of Apocalypse timeline, known as Earth 295. Now this is an alternate future timeline in which Charles Xavier is dead and Apocalypse managed to take over all of North America. Magneto leads the resistance. He's also shacking up with Rogue, not that it matters, but just to paint a picture for y'all. Anyway, Dark Beast is Hank McCoy, except he is a straight up evil mad scientist. He's a twisted, inhumane, sadistic genius who lacks Xavier's guidance and isn't part of the X-Men. Rather, he works for Apocalypse, becoming one of the most prominent geneticists who devoted his time to creating the fittest of beings for the villain, second to only Mr. Sinister's counterpart, Sinister, who was one of Apocalypse's horsemen. Dark Beast would conduct horrific experiments and eventually found his way into the 616 for a brief period of time, causing quite the stir in that universe. Moving on to number 6, Magus. Magus is quite literally the definition of an evil future alternate version of a hero. That hero is Adam Warlock. Now Warlock, arguably one of the most noble individuals in the 616 Marvel Universe, has an evil future version who first appeared in 1975 in Strange Tales issue 178. He hails from Earth 7528, born of Chaos and Order's efforts to create a champion of life to oppose Thanos, who was the champion of death. He would found something called the Universal Church of Truth, which the Tyrant expanded into an intergalactic empire through Holy War. Ah, Holy War. In our number 5 spot, Bruce Banner of Earth 9591. So from here on out, we've got quite the selection of Bruce Banner alternates for you all. Starting off with this one from Earth 9591, also known as the Ruins universe. Now for context, Ruins is a 1995 limited series that follows a former Daily Bugle reporter named Phil Sheldon as he navigates a dystopian alternate reality in which, according to him, I quote, "everything that can go wrong will go wrong." Now in comparison to the 616, it is a reality filled with experiments and accidents that resulted in painful deaths and horrible deformities rather than individuals with superpowers. This version of Banner is no exception. He was horrifically mutated after saving Rick Jones during the Gamma Bomb experimentation that would normally give him his powers. On this much more realism-inspired Earth, the exposure transformed him into a mass of pulsating green tumors. He would eventually be captured and held by the CIA, not that it would improve his existence anymore though. And if that doesn't freak you out, the description of this Banner via Rick Jones describing his transformation likely will. I quote, "It hurt to look at him. His skin went black and dry and cracked, and light shone out of him, like all his meat was on fire. Then he started to swell, and then the tumors broke him open." I mean, when someone describes you as all of your meat was on fire, something to be worried about. Moving on to number 4, Old Man Banner. Old Man Banner definitely falls into the disturbing category of our list. Old Man Banner is from the same universe as Old Man Logan, and is the primary antagonist of that storyline, or rather, the ultimate boss battle for Logan in it. In that 2008 story, supervillains have taken over the universe and many of the superheroes are dead. Now when that takeover was happening, Wolverine was tricked into believing that the X-Men were all villains, so he attacked them and killed them. When the illusion was lifted, all he saw was their maimed dead corpses, which drove him into seclusion, swearing that he would never unleash his claws again. Fast forward to much later. Logan has kept his promise and has settled down, now with a wife and children. But he is not by any means free. The Hulk actually owns the land that he lives on and is effectively his landlord, and isn't a good one. When Logan can't pay off his debt, he ends up agreeing to take a now blind Hawkeye across the Savage Land. But when he returns, he learns that Banner ordered his family to be killed anyway. So he goes after Banner, who in this universe has been driven mad by gamma radiation, and has had a bunch of inbred children with his cousin, She-Hulk. When the two duke it out, he literally eats Logan, who then unleashes his claws and digs his way out of Banner's stomach, inevitably killing him. Moving on to number 3, Genocide. We're going to be talking about a DC character at this number. Genocide, the character. We're not getting that dark today, my friends. Well, maybe a little. Genocide is a pretty morbid character. She was created from the corpse of Wonder Woman in a storyline called Rise of the Olympian after Diana's body was stolen by Ares and then brought back in time during Gail Simone's run on the Wonder Woman series. It gets more grim than that. Ares imbued Wonder Woman's body with energy from soil samples pulled across the globe from places where genocides occurred. So yeah, this includes Auschwitz and Rwanda. And on Genocide's very first encounter with Wonder Woman, she kicked her butt and also stole her lasso of truth. Yikes. And at number 2, Injustice Superman. Injustice Superman is the product of the Joker tricking the Man of Steel into killing his pregnant wife, Lois Lane. As you can imagine, when Clark finds out the truth, he loses it. Not even Batman can stop the Man of Tomorrow from thrusting his fist through the chest of the Joker in one of the most gruesome moments in alternate Superman history. This is the catalyst to the Injustice storyline, a world in which Superman becomes a tyrant, ruling supreme, opposed by a rebellion led by none other than Batman. Believing that he and other metahumans are meant to police the world in order to make it a better place, he goes too far, becoming a racist dictator. It's both an Elseworlds comic tale and the primary plot of 2 Injustice video games, the latter being more impressive than the former, if we're being honest. And last but not least, in at number 1, Maestro Hulk. Maestro Hulk is Hulk at his absolute prime, but insane and completely, totally evil, and arguably one of the biggest threats on this list, because it's a Hulk who not only is immortal and has unlimited power the angrier he gets, but also a Hulk who is cunning and intelligent. Let's backtrack for a hot sec though. First appearing in the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect issue 1 back in 1992, this version of Banner is from Earth 9200, which takes place 100 years into the future after a nuclear war killed off most of Earth's superheroes. The planet is on the brink of extinction, and Hulk has seized control of it. He's been driven mad by the nuclear radiation and is bitter at the world for how he had been treated in the past. That's a deadly combination. He's also stronger than the regular Banner, with the radiation increasing his strength.
And number 9, the Maestro. Alright, sometimes the future is bright, sometimes the future is imperfect. So seeing our heroes grow up on screen and on the page is a wonderful thing, usually, but what about the other characters like the Hulk living for a very, very long time? You gotta wonder what would happen to a guy like that, what happens to his brain, right? So making his first appearance in a vision in the Incredible Hulk Volume 2, issue 401, the Maestro was the main antagonist in the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect. So we gotta talk about it, okay? The story takes place about 100 years in the future after a nuclear war put the planet close to extinction, which is kind of where we're heading now, I feel like. Definitely. An alternate future version of the Hulk, the Maestro, had been absorbing all of this nuclear radiation the entire time, and he ended up becoming the strongest thing on the planet, as if he wasn't already a badass before. So that means massive increases in strength and anger, plus the brains of Banner, made him arguably unstoppable. I mean, it's in the future, so clearly unstoppable. And it's terrifying too. I mean, Professor Hulk has to use Dr. Doom's time machine to go ahead in the future in order to defeat him. But the Maestro has tons of experience when it comes to the Hulk, being in the future and all, being the Hulk in the future. So it doesn't go well for Professor Hulk at all. I mean, he gets his neck snapped broken, right? So then the Maestro took him on a tour around the city in order to convince him that his ways were the best. And it was resolved when Professor Hulk brought Maestro back from the future to the moment the Hulk was created. He appeared right next to the Gamma Bomb test that started it all, and at the same time the Hulk was created, the Maestro was killed. It's like a ha-ha-ha-ha thing. Time's confusing. It's very confusing.
Number 8, Arthur Zarko. Arthur was an evil genius, a scientist from the year 2262 who built a time machine hoping to escape the 23rd century and visit a more primitive period where he would more easily be able to steal some nuclear weapons. One day, Thor is busy helping the military test missiles, and Zarko appears in his time machine, stealing a bomb and escaping into the future. Thor winds up having to follow him to the year 2262 and recover the bomb, defeating the villain and then returning to the present. Later, when Thor has his powers reduced by Odin as punishment for marrying Jane Foster, Loki takes advantage of this opportunity and restores Zarko's memory. Zarko promptly goes back in time to fight Thor and get his vengeance, bringing this mining robot alongside for some extra muscle. Thor is unable to defeat them both and is forced to become Zarko's slave and help him rule back home in the 23rd century. Once Zarko takes control of the central computer of that world, Thor's vow to help Zarko is technically fulfilled, so Thor quickly dispatches him now that he doesn't have a robot protector, and then returns to his own time. And Odin, having witnessed all this, returns Thor to his full strength.
And number 7, Deadpool. Yes, Wade Wilson kills the Marvel Universe, and it is gloriously gory and gory. Deadpool of Earth 12101, that is. So this issue was released August 2012, and I mean, just the front cover, you know you want to take a peek in. So what's the story here? Well, the X-Men put Wade into the Ravencroft Asylum in attempts to, heal his insanity, but of course the Doctor wasn't too good at handling such a task from such a man. The Doctor being Psycho Man, of course. So yeah, he brainwashed Wade in hopes to shut down all of his inner voices, and it worked. But the only downside, those voices were now replaced with other voices, and these ones were encouraging him to, well, of course, kill everybody in the Marvel Universe. Love it. It's like when you get a song stuck in your head, but it's like, kill everyone in the Marvel. You know how that goes. So right off the bat, the series pulls you in, right? It opens up with the Fantastic Four facing off with Wade. And he kind of kills them all. Like Reed Richards' face is all rubbery, it's like melting. Sue has to watch Deadpool kill Johnny before meeting her own demise. And that's just the first few pages alone. Then the Watcher ends up taking us back to the beginning and how it all started with Dr. Psycho and all that jazz. So it's fun, you get a little peek at what happens and then you wrap it back in time. Kind of like a little Tarantino flick. And it's honestly a really fun run. It's not for the faint of heart, but definitely fun.
Number 6. Electro 2099. The regular version of Electro is kind of lame. Sure, he has some good moments, but he's a hot dog with no condiments next to the chili cheese dog that is Electro 2099. Regular Electro looks like one of Santa's elves, but this guy is hardcore, walking around looking like an electrified skeleton. This Electro is actually an android who, after being deemed unnecessary by his creators, was given to these other guys who tortured him for science until his obedience chip burned out and he gained sentience. As you can imagine, after all of this, he's a pretty angry dude. He joins the Sinister Six in 2099 and is later recruited by Venture into the terrorist organization known as the Fist in the year 2016. He once captured Sonny Frisco after following him through Parker Industries and defeating Captain America along the way. He's later stopped by Spider-Man, who uses wooden shields to negate his electric powers and then capture Electro. Now, with Electro imprisoned in a lab, they trick him into revealing the date of the Fist's planned attack on New York City and then deactivate him. It's a pretty quick and sad end to an epic villain who time travels.
And number 5, Dr. Doom. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 5, Victor Von Doom is the main villain for the Fantastic Four and the Avengers, and he's been on the big screen a couple of times, one of which we don't like to talk about. We don't talk about that one. He's a big deal, hence why he's close to being number 1. He's one of the most popular Marvel villains ever. I mean, where to start with this guy? I mean, he fought Mephisto, okay, so he fought the devil, and he also has a pretty wild family history. I mean, his mother, a Latvian woman, liked to get close to demons, maybe a little too close. And then after Victor was born, she would attempt to tap into the demonic powers herself, and her clan wasn't a fan of that. So him and his dad got out of Dodge. We don't want that witch mom in here, no siree. So sadly, his dad froze to death in order to protect him from the cold. So then he figured he'd try this demonic power tapping himself, and then with no luck, he returned to his own brain power and then soon met Reed Richards. Time travel is bound to happen with the brains like him. He traveled back in time using the time platform in Castle Doom, and he went to 2011 AD and got in close with Morgan Le Fay. But thankfully the Fantastic Four showed up like, nope, sorry, guy's a huge dick in the future, don't mind us, we'll just scoop him up and get out of here.
Number 4, Nimrod. In an alternate future known as Days of Future Past, Sentinels rule over North America. The original Nimrod was built as an advanced prototype. He's a mutant hunting robot, built from technology derived from the original Sentinels. He follows Rachel Summers into the past and causes no end of trouble for the X-Men. Eventually, Nimrod is absorbed by the gigantic core Sentinel known as Master Mold, and the two travel together through a dimensional gateway that erases the identity of those who travel through it. So the two merge into a being called Bastion, a fully evolved Sentinel who has been destroyed and rebuilt using Nimrod's previous body several times. It's super weird and complicated like time travel stuff usually is, but personally I just can't get over the fact that his name is Nimrod.
Number 3, Gore. So it was recently announced that the God Butcher himself will be played by Christian Bale in the upcoming Thor Love and Thunder movie. So I figured this would be a good time to play catch up and see what to expect. Gore made his first appearance in Thor God of Thunder issue 2. Born on a planet with no name, always a great sign, Gore lost his parents at a very young age and was told to pray to the gods, because they would always make things better, you know how gods be. And then after getting a wife and son, death kept looming over, and he lost both of them as well. So now he's a little upset at said gods, and he wants them to pay. And with the all-black Necro Sword powers, he headed out for revenge. Now, this sword is a pretty big deal. It was actually built by Null, the almighty symbiote god, and he took out a lot of gods with it, all but of course, Thor. We got Gore Thor and Thor 4. So he uses the Pool of Forever to make his time travel attacks on the gods and stay ahead of the game. He also used it to travel back in time before the universe to kill a baby elder god, little baby boy elder god, and then steal its heart. Sick. Then he used it to go ahead in time to the future to Earth 14412, and I hope the MCU doesn't do too much time travel here because my head already hurts with these new timelines coming. I can't even keep track. What's going on?
Number 2, Professor Zoom. Arch nemesis to Barry Allen, the Flash, Professor Zoom is a time traveler who wants nothing more than to destroy everything the Flash has ever stood for. He is remarkably powerful with a brilliant mind and super speed. He's been affiliated with various groups, including the Secret Society of Supervillains. He is super nefarious, having gone back in time multiple times to get what he wants, even once preventing his own brother from being born. He was once in love with a reporter, but her eventual rejection left him so scorned that his future self went back in time and traumatized the reporter as a child, rendering her mute and causing her to be institutionalized. There are honestly many more examples of this guy's heartlessly evil ways, but I think you get the idea. This is one super evil time traveling jerk, and a perfect fit for the number 2 spot on this list.
And finally, number 1, Kang the Conqueror. Nathaniel Richards, making his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, so old. Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him, of course, to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with all these badass weapons to help him do so. That plus, of course, he's a super genius, which means it's a pretty stacked combo. Kind of OP, if you ask me. He was born in the 30th century of Earth 6311, which is a world where the Dark Ages never happened. Yeah, the time travel stuff doesn't come without consequence though, because as Kang travels more and more through time, he creates time-displaced duplicates, which are just so easy to keep track of. So we love those. Kang is on the way in the MCU as well, and he's being played by Jonathan Majors. And with the whole time variance authority stuff coming into play with the Loki show, things are gonna get so confusing. He actually once ruled over Egypt, believe it or not, as their new pharaoh, named himself Ramatut as well. He was actually there looking for another time traveling baddie, and Sabanor, aka Apocalypse. Yeah, he wanted to make Apocalypse his hair, which is just a great thing to do, for sure. Spooky stuff. You don't want to mess around with this guy.
Number 10, Future State Superman versus Imperious Lex. While this is a new and intriguing story to be sure, it also takes us back to a time when Lex was the ruler of a planet, first introduced in Superman 164. This planet was originally the battle where Superman and Lex planned to fight one another fair and square, as it had a red sun. So, you know, Superman's gonna be on the same level as Lex. However, they learned there were people living there whom Lex helped and eventually bargained with Superman to leave, so they would never know that Superman had beat him. Lex, however, would return to this planet, which was named in his honor as he was their hero, Lexor. In Superman vs. Imperious Lex, it's possible we'll see a return to this planet, as the story tells us Lex is ruling a planet under a red sun and has enjoyed many bountiful and peaceful years there when his planet is invited to join the ranks of the United Planets by one of Earth's representatives, Lois Lane. Lois and Superman obviously, however, don't trust Lex and remain suspicious that he's up to something, seeking to expose his true nature. Superman vs. Imperious Lex is written by Mark Russell with gorgeous art by Steve Pugh.
And number 9, Dark Detective. Written by Mariko Tamaki and Dan Mora, big changes are coming to Bruce Wayne's life, and we cannot wait any longer. I mean, specifically the Dark Detective. So yeah, we get to see Bruce Wayne on the run after the world thought him dead, so okay. But while a new Batman takes over, and of course the nasty new military organization, the Magistrate, has taken over control of Gotham City. And another thing fans are looking forward to is Grifter is back. Yeah, Cole Cash is not going to have an easy go as Gotham City PD closes in. So after meeting with Luke Fox, we have to wonder, will his day get better or worse? We can't wait to see. And number 8, Superman of Metropolis. Written by Sean Lewis and Brandon Easton, last time we saw Clark, he left the safety of Earth in the hands of his son, Jonathan Kent. So, of course, he has one thing and one thing only to make sure he does, and that is, of course, to protect his home city. So it's a little stressful now that Brainiac is back and he's attacking. So John takes drastic measures, and then the outcome? Bottle City of Metropolis. Now, Supergirl, she's coming in hot. She's got some things to say. And in the new Bottle City, we see the rise of Jake Jordan, former Manhattan Guardian, looking for a new beginning. And alongside an anarchist named Honest Mary, also looking for a fresh start, with, of course, drastic ways. So now Jake has to deal with that inside the bottle, but fear not, he'll have the help of, drumroll, Jimmy Olsen.
Number 7, Future State Justice League. I feel bad actually ranking this one so low, as it still looks like such an amazing book, and it features some characters I'm both excited to meet and excited to see more of. Future State Justice League introduces us to this new era of heroes as we see Jonathan Kent become Superman, Yara Flores as Wonder Woman, Joe Moline as Green Lantern, my favorite, Andy Curry as Aquawoman, Tim Fox as Batman, and a brand new Flash from somewhere in the great multiverse. This new team keeps their true identity secret even from each other, which makes the suspense even greater when they find their greatest enemies dead and murdered within the Hall of Justice, and realize they are all the lead suspects on the mystery murder case. We also get a side story featuring Justice League Dark, who for some unknown reason were disbanded but now need to reassemble in order to defend the very fabric of reality from the Crow King Merlin. So many awesome mysteries afoot.
And number 6, Teen Titans. Written by Tim Sheridan, we see the world after the original new Teen Titans when they wanted to start their own school, right? You know, guide the minds of young ones as they explore their super side to make the world a better, safer place. And then cut 2 years later, where Titan's Tower is now just a constant reminder of all of those young lives lost, the lives of those young supers. So Nightwing, Starfire, Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Raven are going after what made that school go to hell in the first place. So now they have to get help from the mysterious Red X, who we've only seen in the Teen Titans animated show. We can't wait to see what happens there.
Number 5, Future State, Harley Quinn. Of course, you can never have too much Harley in your life, but this series I think will be a good one to grab for Harley fans out there, as well as people maybe just getting into the character now. Stephanie Phillips is writing and promises to bring something new to the character while also taking inspiration from some of the great Harley writers to come before her. The 2-part series is meant to focus on Harley Quinn's independence and what that means for her as she tries to define what kind of hero or villain or something in between she wants to be. Phillips wants to remind everyone of how smart Harley is, while also giving her some more reasons to question both the side of good and the side of evil when it comes to carving out what exactly her own role means. This series will also be setting the stage for Harley's 2021 series to come after it, which will continue the story. So for fans looking to get into that, this is a must read.
And number 4, The Flash. Written by Brandon Vietti, the preview for this one has me pumped up. So we find Barry Allen holding Captain Cold's gun, just locked and cold loaded, and if you're not already intrigued by that, I don't know what else to say. Besides that, we find Barry Allen also without his superpowers. That's right, he's all alone with no backup, so he has no choice but to team up with the other former Flashes to go against Wally West. Yeah, so he has to use the weapons of his foes to save Wally. How badass is that? And on top of that epic storyline, we're also introduced to a new Flash named Kid Quick from Earth 11. And we're expecting our first look at the new speedster in DC's Very Merry Multiverse one-shot coming up. Can't wait.
Number 3, Future State Catwoman. One of the series I know I am most excited for is Catwoman's, and trust me, you will be too when you hear why I'm so pumped. Automatopoeia is going to be making a comeback, baby! One of my favorite villains. And not only that, Catwoman will be dealing with all sorts of tricksy characters coming at her from all sides as she attempts to take on the Magistrate. She'll be running into a formerly presumed dead Bruce Wayne, but is it really him? Or some kind of impersonator looking to trick Catwoman into falling prey to their trap. She'll also be running into and possibly squaring off with Talia al Ghul, which is likely to be tense no matter what and interesting. This series is going to be written by Ram V with stunning artwork by Otto Schmidt. and you'll likely want to collect the issues considering some of the beautiful artwork featured there as well.
And number 2, Nightwing. Written by Andrew Constant, we see a world with Batman gone. So that means it's time for Nightwing to step up his game. And that nasty magistrate we just mentioned is just making everybody's lives a not so great time. So we get to see Nightwing try and get ahead of the game and protect the city. Awesome. So where else to collect yourself and prepare than Arkham Asylum? It's got that homey feel, you know, it really gets the brain going, gets you in a nice calm zone. And then this is where he meets somebody claiming to be the new Batman. Okay, interesting, very suspicious. So in newly released images, we see a new Nightwing beside the red X, and he's wearing Deathstroke's mask. You love it. And the new Nightwing also carries a new sidearm, so they mean business.
Number 1, Future State, the next Batman. This one is a must read because it promises to introduce a new and powerful yet mysterious character. Someone who we haven't met yet, but who you might be shocked to learn already kind of exists. He is the estranged brother of Batwing, Luke Fox, which makes him, you guessed it, Lucius Fox's son. What's even more interesting history-wise is that this new son actually isn't new. Not really. Tim Fox is the next Batman, and although he prefers to go by Jace in this continuity, we've met him in a previous one before even Luke existed. New Earth. In that continuity, Tim got involved with a gang that was working for a rival and dirty businessman to Bruce Wayne. Once revealed, this caused some pretty big tension and drama between him and his dad. Here we don't know yet just what Jace's past entails, but we do know that he is going up against not just the magistrate, but his father and Gotham's mayor as well. The next Batman series also includes some pretty interesting side series among them. I'm most excited for Gotham City Sirens myself, as well as Batgirls. Number 10, Earth 13371. While we don't know for sure, it's possible that in this reality the Brood Queen actually won and sought to expand her rule by traveling to the main continuity universe of Earth 616 through a crack in the universe. Whether or not this is a thing on Earth 13371, it still seems to be a pretty dark timeline in Professor Xavier's case. In this alternate reality, Charles somehow found himself transformed into a giant Akanti whale, who became possessed by the Brood Queen and used as her space vessel, transporting both her and her army. After a fight with the Extreme X-Men, this version of Charles asked Dazzler to kill him to prevent him from being controlled and used for ill by another evil force in the future. Number 9, Reign. The series Spider-Man Reign takes place in the alternate future belonging to Earth 70237. Here on this Earth in New York at least, there are no longer superheroes or supervillains, there's just the government and the police. The city of New York and its citizens are strictly monitored and protected by both to a point where their control feels both brutal and big brothery. Here, an old man Peter has turned both insane and senile, with Mary Jane having passed and haunting him in what appear to be dark hallucinations. Parker attempts to return as Spider-Man at one point, but is now an old man and ends up having his head bashed in with Mary Jane's tombstone later on in the timeline. Number 8, Earth X. This reality was created by Alex Ross and Jim Krueger in the late 1990s and was meant to be Marvel's equivalent to DC's Kingdom Come. It was a lot more spacey than DC's Kingdom Come, but it wasn't any less dark. Earth X's alternate reality of 9997 explored a world where Earth was forever changed when the Inhumans decided to release a ton of Terrigen mists into the air to create more supers. This created a ton of chaos on Earth as people were popping up with superpowers everywhere, but it gets even more crazy when it's discovered a celestial egg is growing within the Earth's core, and the Celestials come to eliminate the human race. Franklin adopts the mantle of Galactus and joins up with his father, Mr. Fantastic, and Black Bolt to defeat the Celestials and destroy the egg. But this creates a bunch of other problems, leaving the Earth unstable and setting off a ton of natural disasters. Number 7, Ultimate. The Ultimate Universe was created to be the darker, more edgy version of Marvel's main continuity, Earth 616. This is the reality where Tony Stark and Carol Danvers decided the best way to resolve their difference and dislike of one another was to hook up. After, of course, Black Widow and Tony were no longer a thing because it turned out Black Widow was still an actual spy who had plans to double-cross her teammates. Natasha ended up dead at the hands of her usually very good friend and former love interest in the main continuity, Hawkeye. Hawkeye in this reality lost his family because of of Black Widow. They were killed by the people she worked with, and Clint himself was captured, tortured, and only escaped by using his fingernails as deadly projectile weapons. He then tracked down Natasha where she was being held in the hospital and executed her. Yep, the Earth of 1610 was basically meant to be the darker 616. Number 6. Days of Future Past. The alternate Earth of 811 is an alternate future reality where the Sentinels rule. The Sentinels, being enemies of mutants, have killed most of their opponents, with the surviving mutants being kept in camps. The concentration kind, by the way, not the fun kind, sadly. Not only are most mutant heroes dead, but many of the non-mutant heroes are as well, with Avengers, Spider-Man, and FF being taken out additionally. It's just overall a bleak reality where pretty much everybody's dead. Number 5. Old Man Logan. One of the bleakest timelines we've seen explored is that of Old Man Logan. This alternate reality shows us a potential alternate future for Wolverine that follows the events of a final showdown between Marvel's superheroes and their supervillains, wherein the villains won. Logan himself is responsible in this reality for killing his fellow X-Men, being tricked into doing so by one of Mysterio's illusions, which made him believe that his fellow teammates were actually villains who had infiltrated the X-Mansion. Sad, poor Logan. Number 4. Age of Apocalypse. Let's just talk about how this reality even came to be, which is dark enough. In this reality, Legion was attempting to eliminate Magneto to avoid him becoming a threat in a potential future, but Xavier put himself in Legion's path as he attacked. As such, Legion ended up killing his own father Xavier by accident. Here, the villain Magneto leads the X-Men and attempts to fight against the devastating foe Apocalypse. Even when they finally succeed, Weapon X, aka this world's Wolverine, ends up turning against them once more and rising up, becoming the new Apocalypse. Great. Yeesh. Number 3 is Zombieverse. One of the darkest realities and most well-known alternate realities belonging to the Marvelverse is the Zombieverse of Earth 2149. In this reality, pretty much every hero or villain you know, love, or despise has been turned into a zombie or has been killed. And many of the non-powered characters that you may have loved, well, a lot of those people are dead. Evil Dead character and well-known undead fighter Ashley Williams also makes an appearance in this reality. He ends up working his way into one of the last places that is safe from the infection on Earth, Castle Doomstat, the home of Dr. Doom. While Ash ends up surviving the events, Doom and many others end up perishing as even the castle later becomes overrun, while Doom rushes to save the survivors he was housing, ushering them through a portal which Doom plans to close behind them. Still, Doom doesn't get to escape, he just gets to be zombie food. Number 2. Thanos Wins. The reality of Thanos Wins may not yet have an official number, but for now you can find it under temporary reality number 666, aka TRN 666. Just from that temporary number, you should be able to get a sense for how dark this alternate reality is. This reality is one where Thanos became king after killing pretty much every other being in the galaxy. With everything else reduced to ash, he had Ghost Rider, who is currently serving him, fetch the Thanos of Earth 616, so that this younger alternate version of himself could kill the older King Thanos. That way, King Thanos could finally be with his true love, Death. In this reality, Hulk has also been kept for years as Thanos' pet, and Ghost Rider is actually Cosmic Ghost Rider Frank Castle, who was driven insane as the Spirit of Vengeance after being left alone on Earth for presumably hundreds of years, finally joining Galactus, only to later have to finally join King Thanos when they were defeated by him. Sad. Number 1. Cancerverse. In this reality, Lovecraftian elder gods known as the Many-Angled Ones made a deal with the cancer-ridden Mar-Vell. Instead of Mar-Vell dying like on Earth 616, he ended up curing the reality of the concept of death using a ritual. It's not good. Without any more death, life transformed into something darker without anything to keep it in check. It's bad news. All of the heroes of Earth 10011, the Cancerverse reality, became corrupted, and Franklin Richards became a host for the Many-Angled Ones, as described in Annihilation Scourge. The Cancerverse also attempted to infiltrate the main continuity of Earth 616 at one point, aiming to spread their corruption. It's a scary place, the Cancerverse.
In a 10 booster gold, Michael John Carter started off as a glory-hogging show-off from the 25th century. Michael is a gifted athlete, getting to attend Gotham University on a football scholarship, until his father came back into his life. After leaving because of a gambling problem, Michael, desperate for the approval of the father he just met, gets convinced to intentionally lose football games for gambling purposes. But when he was discovered, he got expelled and ended up getting a job at the Metropolis Space Museum. However, with the aid of a robot named Skeets, Michael stole devices from the museum displays about superheroes, including a Legion of Superheroes flight ring and Brainiac 5's force field belt. With the help of Rip Hunter's time sphere, Michael traveled to the 20th century, intent on becoming a superhero and turning it into a business for his own gain. Which, I mean, kinda smart. Like what Billy thought during the beginning of his superhero career in the Shazam movie. Eventually, Booster Gold ended up discovering his true abilities and actually liked the whole superhero thing, so he just stuck to it without as much of a hidden agenda. And at 9, Future Flash. While some may consider Future Flash as a villain, and it's technically true, he is still Barry Allen with a cause that seems fairly normal, at least in the comic book version of normal. While yes, the villains justify their missions, Barry's mission was to kill himself in order to prevent Wally from dying, thus changing the future, and thus everything he did in the future would be obsolete. He wouldn't have needed to kill all the rogues or any other villain, and he wouldn't be alive to do it, thus saving everyone else in the future, since he only killed them to gain enough speed to travel back in time. So while yes, he did kill a lot of people, he did it so that it wouldn't happen, so technically he killed them in order to save their lives. So it's a very noble cause. We talk about weird stuff like this literally all the time, and it's kind of sad how I understand it perfectly. My whole family watches the Flash series on the CW, but my mom stopped because she couldn't understand the whole timeline shenanigans thing. But I could, fairly easily. And I understand this perfectly, even if it's confusing. And at 8, Spider-Man 2099. Miguel O'Hara was born in New York City many years after the end of the Heroic Age, which is our modern day of hero stories. Eventually in life, Miguel becomes the head of genetics program at Alchemax, intended to create new super soldiers they call Corporate Raiders. Great name. Miguel is inspired by Spider-Man and uses records of him as a reference in hope that one day he can create a similarly powered person. After a human test subject dies, Miguel wants to resign. However, his boss, Tyler Stone, instead tricks him into getting addicted to Rapture, a highly addictive drug that only he can provide to Miguel, if he keeps working for him. But luckily Miguel had put his own genetic code into the machine during initial experiments, so he attempted to use it to set his DNA back to before he got addicted. Smart plan. Except Miguel's rival Aaron Delgado sabotages the machine, causing Michael to gain 50% spider DNA. He survives the sabotage but then realizes he has spider abilities. His boss sends men to try to find this new spider person, and Miguel dons a costume to conceal his identity while he combats his pursuers. However, some people actually believe that Miguel is the original Spider-Man back from the dead and thought to bring back the return of Thor. I've said it before, but Spider-Man 2099 is my favorite alternate version of Spider-Man because Edge of Time is one of my favorite Spider-Man games, and that costume is just dope as hell. Like, look at it. Ah! And it's 7XS. Jenny Ognat is the granddaughter of Barry Allen and was kidnapped by the Dominators, even though at first she did not show any signs of super speed. Her super speed only activated when she saw her father being tortured by the Dominators. She was able to escape with her father before fire from the Dominators caused their base to explode. After this incident, she checked herself into a lab to get help in controlling her super speed. Once she did, she was drafted into the Legion of Superheroes, at least if you look at the comic version. In the Arrowverse, XS is the first daughter of Barry Allen and Iris West Allen, played by the wonderful Jessica Parker Kennedy, who came from the future during seasons 4 and 5 of that show to meet her father and get to know him, and train alongside him. She appeared at her parents' wedding and various other places in season 4, and only really made an impact in the season 4 finale where she helped Barry destroy the Starlab satellite that the Thinker had sent crashing to Earth. Her helping her father caused events in the timeline to be moved up, like the appearance of Cicada and the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, which was probably only because Arrow couldn't get enough seasons to make it to 2024, unfortunately, since Emily Bett had left and Steven decided it was time to say goodbye. So, I blame you, XS, for ending Arrow. And at 6, Cable. Cable's first appearance was in the New Mutants number 86 and a next issue teaser, which was followed with a full appearance in the New Mutants number 87. At first, Cable was meant to be an entirely separate character, a new leader that contrasted their first mentor, Professor X. However, he was later written to be a future version of Nathan Summers, the son of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor, also known as Jean Grey's clone. He's from the future since as an infant he was transported to the future where he grew up to be a cybernetically enhanced warrior before returning to the present because comics. There's also a young version of Cable that comes from not as far in the future, that he comes back and then kills his older self because he wouldn't send the X-Men back to their proper time. Something which young Cable does to keep time intact, but then he resurrects his father using a bit of the Phoenix Force, which is basically the same thing that old Cable was doing, but like So an even younger version of Cable comes along and kills young Cable. Okay, not really, but can you imagine how screwy that would be? Halfway through number 5, Rip Hunter. Rip Hunter is one hell of a man. He is a time traveler, guardian of the time stream, leader of the Time Masters, and previous leader of the Legends of Tomorrow. Rip spent his entire life planning for enemies a time traveler would face, so in an effort to prevent someone from killing him as a child, he invented the alias of Rip Hunter, when he is in fact the son of Booster Gold, something that not even Booster Gold knows. Rip invented time travel technology in the post-crisis universe, and has helped both Booster Gold and Animal Man in their time traveling escapades before taking on the Illuminati conspiracy. This dude took on the Illuminati. If this video gets demonetized, just know that it was them. Rip eventually ended up getting stranded in the past in the prehistoric era. Somehow he was able to return to the present, and after doing so, he began protecting Earth's heroes from time-traveling villains. In the CW's Legends of Tomorrow, Rip assembled a team of heroes who were known as Legends in the future in an effort to prevent Vandal Savage from taking over the world and killing his family as he had in his timeline. But it was later revealed that he picked a team of individuals who weren't remembered by time, and that wouldn't be missed if they died, even though Sarah Lance had come back from the dead like 3 separate times at this point. And at 4, Old Man Logan. The world of Earth 807128 has been conquered and divided among supervillains, with territories belonging to the Abomination, Magneto, Doctor Doom, and the Red Skull, who had named himself President of the United States, which sounds an awful lot like what the Beyonder did in the Spider-Man 90s cartoon, where he sent the Red Skull, Doc Ock, Doctor Doom, and the Lizard to a planet unknowing of evil to see how they would react. And those 4 villains took over the planet and ended up having Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Captain America, and Storm, along with the Lizard, take them down. However, in this story, Logan lives with his wife and children in California until the Hulk Gang, which is a group of what I'm going to call Hulklings, created when Hulk had assaulted his first cousin, She-Hulk, and then the Hulklings kill his family. And Logan says the Wolverine persona had died when the villains attacked and conquered, only using his claws once after that event. His mission was to get revenge for his family and kill Maestro, a future version of the Hulk. And in the Venomverse, this version of Old Man Logan raises Bruce Banner Jr. for 15 years before telling him of his true parentage. At that point, Bruce gets mad and storms out, which is really weird and confusing. Why would you do that? Your father was a psycho, of course he wouldn't tell you. And at 3, Batman Beyond. After everyone Batman cares about is dead, he's given up fighting crime. But an athletic 16-year-old named Terry McGinnis, Terry is his name and I know it. After stumbling upon the Batcave, Terry realizes who he really wants to be and begins fighting crime under the tutelage of Bruce. But Terry has the aid of a new age high-tech bat suit that augments his abilities, which I don't really understand, but hey, it's 2039, so who knows what tech we will have by then. However, Batman retires in 2019, so technically at this point he isn't fighting crime anymore. I know that he still has comics being published, but like, he isn't retired, but he is also retired. Like, no more Batman for you. Also, Terry, his name is Terry. I will not make the same mistake again. It's Terry, not Tyler. And if you don't understand, I accidentally started calling Terry Tyler because I was just typing and wasn't paying attention, so I just typed Tyler. Yeah, I called him Terry at the beginning of that number, just not the rest of the time. It's kind of a joke here now. When I first started. And at 2, Connor Hawke. The CW has had quite a bit of time travel over the years, and while in the comics Connor Hawke may be the son of Oliver Queen, on TV he's actually the adopted son of John Diggle. Originally in the timeline, John Diggle Jr. was Connor Hawke, but after Flashpoint and XS changed the timeline, John Diggle Jr. became the new Deathstroke and leader of the Deathstroke gang. And the hero known as Connor Hawke is the son of Ben Turner, aka Bronze Tiger, and Sandra Hawke. Bronze Tiger did actually renew his name when he helped Oliver stop the riots after Diaz attacked the prison in an effort to kill Oliver, but eventually Ben ended up dying due to a stray arrow that Connor couldn't stop. If the timeline from the Legends episode of Star City 2046 is still canon, considering how that at that point he was John Diggle Jr., not Connor, but I don't know. I can't confirm. A lot of things in the show got screwy. Anyways, he was brought to the past when the Monitor brought him, Mia Smoke Queen, and William Clayton back after Renee's daughter had just been killed by John Diggle Jr., so that they could meet their fathers in their prime and help in the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, which only Mia ended up helping in. So, yeah, the other two kind of like didn't show up. So yeah, thanks for that. It's not like the universe was ending or anything. Finally, into number 1, Old Man Peter. Old Man Peter is probably the most horrifying story on this list. The story of Spider-Man Reign is a 4-issue comic limited series set 30 years into the Spider-Man of Earth 70237's future. In this future, New York City is essentially a safe area, even if it's under total control of its mayor. Superheroes and supervillains are gone, but the government has an incredibly ruthless police force known as the Rain. Peter works as a florist but ends up getting fired because he's Peter, but when he gets home, there is news of police brutality coming from the Rain. J. Jonah Jameson delivers Peter a package, not like that. He also apologizes to Peter, saying he sold the paper because of the lies. Inside the package was Peter's old camera and the black-suited Spider-Man mask. When J-Cubed starts a riot, Peter puts on the mask and fights off the Rain wearing only his mask and his underwear, which is disturbing on its own. But the worst part about this is that Mary Jane is dead, dying due to being exposed to radiation thanks to trying to have kids with Peter. Meaning that Spider-Man is so radioactive that his swimmers killed his wife. Which is horrifying and has way too many implications, and I don't want to think about it. Did they have like 5 heads or something? Great, now I'm thinking about it.
Number 10, Cable. Cable is not only dangerous to others he comes up against as a hero, but he's even dangerous to himself. Cable is a badass from the future who is taken there in his youth to protect him and ensure his survival. He has since made his way all across and through time, and has even returned to the present from the future, which is his past. Yeah, it's a lot of time travel stuff. It can get a little confusing. When Cable dies, it isn't even because anyone else took him out either, and he even saw it coming, because it turns out that his younger self was the one responsible, a version of the character we often refer to as young Cable or Kid Cable. So yeah, Cable is deadly in the sense that he'll do whatever he needs to, even if it means ending his own time loop by killing his older self. Does that make sense? I hope what I said just made sense. I think it made sense. Number 9, Old Woman Laura. X-23's future self ends up in a much nicer alternate future reality than her genetic father Wolverine. Old Man Logan's reality? Wasteland, lots of death and people who have gone insane. Cannibalism. Old Woman Laura's reality, a sort of futuristic paradise where Kamala Khan ends up as president. But even still, her future isn't perfect, because Laura is dying. Her genes have become unstable in her old age due to a flaw in the cloning process that made her not so good. The other thing that's not so good, Doom is holding the people of Latveria hostage, and it's up to Laura to put a stop to it. This version of Laura from the future is just as deadly as her main continuity counterpart, but with added years of experience, and is willing to do whatever it takes to defeat Doom, even if it means killing him and possibly sacrificing herself to do it. Number 8, Old Man Logan. Old Man Logan stays a hero in the future, but only because he doesn't have much other choice, really. Really, all Logan wants to do is live his life without having to think too much of all the deaths of his friends that he's responsible for. Logan in the alternate future of Earth 807128 ends up killing all of his fellow X-Men after being tricked into thinking they were all villains by Mysterio. Not only was he capable of causing all of that death, but further into the future, he goes up against a powerful and horrific villain in his time and reality, facing the head of the Hulk gang and also sort of his landlord, Pappy Banner, aka Old Man Hulk. Something went wrong with Bruce Banner as time went on in this reality, and he basically lost his mind, likely as a result of that gamma radiation affecting him well into his elder years, and not in a good way. Logan ends up being swallowed whole by Hulk, but defeats him in the end by cutting his way out of Old Man Hulk's gut. It's pretty gross. Number 7, Green Lantern. Jessica Cruz from our time might not be quite so dangerous yet, but when we glimpsed into her possible future in the Future State line from DC, we learned that there is a future version of her who becomes a Yellow Lantern, joining the Sinestro Corps. Not all Yellow Lanterns are bad, but because they are generally about instilling fear in others, they more often than not tend to end up becoming deadly supervillains. And that's usually who they are. Jessica Cruz found herself stranded on a Green Lantern base and outpost without her powers, and when Sinestro Corps members showed up to investigate, found herself offered a Yellow Lantern ring after her fight against them had resulted in her overcoming her own fears and instilling fear into the hearts of her enemies. Which I'm not gonna lie, I really like that twist in the future for Jessica. I think Jessica as a Yellow Lantern is really cool. Number 6, The Fallen One. The Fallen One is a version of Norrin Rad, who comes from a very dark future where Thanos wins. He first appeared in issue 15 of Thanos from 2016 in the Thanos Wins storyline. While he is pretty swiftly defeated, it is only because those he goes up against are even more deadly than him. And even then, it takes a few issues before the fight against him is actually concluded. So it's not like you're in, you're out. It's not a one and done. It's a few issues. Norrin Rad, aka the Silver Surfer, became the Fallen One after he was imbued with black matter and also boasts, of course, of the power cosmic, in addition to wielding Thor's hammer Mjolnir. He also comes leading the charge of the Annihilation Wave, so he's got a lot going on. He got all this power in the hopes of standing a chance in the final showdown with Thanos, as one of the last beings left alive in the universe, one of the final people to actually fight him. Sadly, he does fail, but he still manages to look deadly and badass while doing so. So you gotta give him some points for that. Number 5, Superman. John Kent in Future State takes up the mantle of Superman after his father. This also happens after his father left Earth, and many of those who he helped believe that he actually has gone missing, possibly to never return. That's what people think is going on with OG Superman. Well, we skip through the future timeline and Future State with this version of John from this future being shown as a very heroic character. We also see some things that he does in this futuristic timeline that seem, well, not so heroic. Like when he bottled the city of Metropolis. John believed he had no other choice and that this was kind of the most peaceful solution to fixing the problems that the city faced at the time. However, he later is forced to confront the fact that he took away the freedom of the people of Metropolis when he made this choice for them. Future State John Kent is dangerous because he is willing to do whatever it takes to protect the city of Metropolis, which sometimes means taking actions that other heroes like Supergirl find questionable. Number 4, King Thor. King Thor might be one of the most powerful future heroes on this list, but he also is only so deadly and dangerous because he's living in a time where he has to be. King Thor is the alternate future version of Thor from the alternate Earth of 14412. Here, Thor goes on to become the Allfather and lives beyond the point where Midgard becomes a lifeless husk as a result of Thor's once more again villainous brother Loki, the god of mischief. At one point while battling Doom in the future, King Thor is granted the Phoenix Force by Logan, who is currently bonded to it at that time, and is able to use that power to defeat Doom. Considering that King Thor will do whatever it takes to defeat those who would oppose him, and considering how much power he wields, even when he doesn't have the Phoenix Force, I'd say he's a pretty dangerous future hero. I wouldn't want to go up against him. Number 3, Cosmic Ghost Rider. I would say Cosmic Ghost Rider is one of the most dangerous heroes on this list because he's not entirely mentally stable, which also makes him a lot more unpredictable. Cosmic Ghost Rider was originally Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. When Thanos attacked Earth, Frank made a deal with Mephisto, following his death, to become a spirit of vengeance, a Ghost Rider, so that he could return to Earth and get revenge on Thanos for all of the people on Earth that he had killed. However, by the time Frank returned to Earth, there was basically nothing left to avenge, and Thanos had already left, leaving the planet empty and desolate. Frank wandered as a Ghost Rider for years, and in his solitude, lost his mind. He would go on to become a Herald of Galactus in an attempt to defeat Thanos, but would eventually submit to being Thanos' Herald after realizing that fighting against him was pretty pointless. Number 2, Booster Gold. Booster Gold is demonstrably dangerous as a hero from the future, mainly because he has no idea what he's doing. He has tons of knowledge of what is meant to happen in the main continuity and present day that he traveled to from the future, but he has no idea of how messing with the past timeline or anything like that could affect the present day or its future. We see how dangerous he can be when he attempts to even do good, like saving Bruce's parents in the past so that they can be there for his wedding. Unfortunately, in doing so, completely messes with the timeline to the point that Booster is actually forced to travel back in time and make sure that Bruce's parents are killed, and that poor young Bruce is basically there to witness their deaths. It's also kind of implied that Booster being there and fixing all of that is actually what caused their deaths. It's pretty crazy, it's pretty trippy. Booster might have some valuable knowledge as someone from the future, but he doesn't have the finesse needed to know when the timeline can be tweaked and when it should be left alone to avoid catastrophes from manifesting in the future. Basically, do not let Booster time travel and mess with the timeline. It is not a good idea. Number 1, Iron Lad. Iron Lad is not specifically from the future, but he does go on to become a very dangerous villain who returns from the future. Iron Lad, who was a member of the Young Avengers, it turns out is actually destined to become Kang the Conqueror, who has many different villainous personas throughout the years. I won't go into them right now, but you know some of them. And he's also known for his time travel antics. He often travels back through to the past from the future to enact all kinds of elaborate plots. As a Mortis, he had a hand in creating White Vision. Kang also at one point turns Iron Man evil, brainwashing him into becoming his loyal servant and villainous right-hand man. He's basically behind a lot of evil things that you're like, what is even happening here? And then it'll be like, haha, it was Kang the whole time. Possibly what we'll see in the MCU. I'm placing my bets. Because sadly, I don't think I'm getting Norman Osborn in this phase.